Hi, I'm Rosa. I would like to talk about grief, death, and stuck souls. Beginning with the topic of grief. So, for a lot of us, something we don't speak a lot about because it's uncomfortable, because it can bring up all these waves of unfelt emotion. And I really want to demystify these topics, not by suggesting that I know everything about them, but just by bringing them up for us to look at, to feel into, and to talk about, both here and also out in the world with people we know. And one of the things that I really strongly believe is in the power of feeling, that our emotions are there, and either we choose to feel them, to receive them, and to access their wisdom, their messages, their life force, their energy, or we choose to push them to one side, bury them down, freeze them out, ignore them, or go up into our minds and write over them, telling ourselves why we shouldn't feel what we feel. And coming into this embodied sense of feeling where we're really able to experience it with our whole bodies, not just our minds, not just as a thought. And I really believe that as we feel these heavier, more uncomfortable emotions, that also allows us to more fully feel joy, to more fully feel pleasure, to more fully feel bliss, and to more fully be alive and be whole beings. Because the gift of grief and the gift of sadness is compassion, is being able to care about other people, being able to love. So really seeing grief as a doorway into our hearts and acknowledging this almost collective discomfort around feeling. This fear of the force of something beyond our control. And especially with grief, it can be one of those things that rises and dissipates without any clear reason as to why. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this in terms of the element of water. Obviously, we can feel it physically through tears, this movement of water in our eyes. And also it feels a lot like waves, this rushing, rising of the feeling, and then it's softening and fading away before another wave comes, rolls over, and begins to drop down. So within that, this image of surrendering to the waves, of being able to surf and ride the waves, in contrast to freezing over, which is when we then freeze our heart, which is when we then get this kind of detached, holding back look and experience. So what do we need to be with water? One of the ways that we can support being with water in our emotional body is by being by bodies of water outside of ourselves. So it can be really helpful if it's close to you or accessible to sit by a lake, a river, an ocean, a waterfall. And if you don't have those available, then even a bath or a shower. And as we are by those bodies of water, or even put ourselves in them and allow that movement of water outside to really hold, heal, and move through the emotions and movement within, is very, very powerful. And also observing what happens to support that movement of water. So there isn't just this rush, there's also in the ocean the shore, the sand, the cliffs, the rocks. On a waterfall, same, the rocks that are behind the flow of water, the banks to the sides, even the trees and the plants. On a lake or a river as well, this earth, stone, meeting container around it. So as we allow ourselves to fully feel, also finding those ways that help us ground, that help us tap into stillness, that act as a container for that. What does that mean? That can mean being still. It can mean being with those elements, getting barefoot on the ground, or finding a tree behind us and leaning back against it. It can also mean creating the sense of stillness within. So maybe alongside a more feeling movement practice, also bringing in an aspect of stillness or seated meditation or a pause or tuning into the breath, giving it space to be steady and stable. Balancing that stillness, that container, that holding with this more moving, Shakti flowing sense of felt feeling. And how do we really tap into that feeling? So one way can be to move with it, to dance with it, to even open out and stretch and receive into it, to breathe with it, to sigh out, to allow ourselves to make sound. And to really have this embodied sense of this is what I'm feeling in this moment, without needing to create a storyline or an analysis around it. And another thing that a lot of us don't have is ritual. So beyond the realms of religion, although if you are religious, of course, engaging in that ritual and finding meaning within it. And if you don't follow any specific religion or practices, finding a way to weave in the meaning that ritual and ceremony give us. So helping us create a way of sharing it with other people or with another aspect of ourselves. So things like lighting a candle for what it is that we've lost or left behind, or for that person if we're grieving for someone who's died or a relationship, taking time to really be with what it is that we've learned, what we've received. So you might want to write down some of the gifts of that person or that situation. You might want to find objects or items that connect that person and represent them. So maybe even creating an altar and placing a photo, a candle, some of those items, and taking time to really make it special. So maybe a special day in the week, maybe around the full or new moon, maybe with a seasonal change, and giving time to be in this ceremony, this process of acknowledging this transition and acknowledging what you feel and making beauty from it. So much art and poetry comes from grief, comes from this depth of feeling. So allowing ourselves to tap into that. And moving on to the topic of death. I'd like to pause for a moment after that word so we can really feel into how it sits with us, how we respond to that word. Death. And see if we can begin to open ourselves to it so it doesn't become like a numbing out or a denying or ignoring or pushing away. See if we can really expand into and receive that word, death. And as we sit with that, stripping away those layers of fear that are so surrounded in this word, those layers of discomfort, of feeling it's something we can't talk or think about, and see if we can really allow it in and honor it and acknowledge the power that it has and acknowledge the presence that it has in our life. Acknowledging and honoring this energy of clearing that allows change, that allows transition from one relationship to another, between one season and another, from one stage of our life to another, and that without this process there would be no change and everything would be stagnant and therefore not alive. And as we tune into also maybe people that we know who have passed, being aware of what that space is, both ahead of us and also around us and present right now in this moment. Being aware of that space where there is nothing, that space beyond physical form. And mystics through ages have described it in different ways, from the void, this great sense of emptiness and stillness that if you tap into will be a different experience every time, that is beyond our capacity to understand, that stillness isn't what we think it is, that silence isn't what we think it is, that death isn't what we think it is, because it goes so far beyond our capacity to understand whilst we have bodies, whilst we are alive. Another way that it has been described is the space beyond duality. So as long as we're in a body, we're separate from each other, we're male or female, we're alive or dead, we're you or me, and there's this sense of division. And after our journey through our body, when we go into the next realm, we go beyond all of those separations, which is why it's sometimes described as a black light. I actually had this experience before I'd heard that phrase of light and dark becoming the same, of me and you becoming the same, and of all these layers of identity not existing anymore, not having any sense of Rosa or of being a woman or of being English, this deep wholeness where everything wove together and none of those labels of separation were real. And it felt very beautiful. It felt like dissolving in this huge warm embrace of deep, deep love, and having no fear, no sense of being judged. As I feel right now, I'm scared of how these words will be received or what whoever's watching this will be thinking. And in that realm beyond, none of that exists. Just this deep presence, just this simple being where all doubts and worries are not in that realm because they're here whilst we have bodies and minds. So acknowledging death, acknowledging its beauty and its power, and stripping away some of the levels and layers of fear and taboo that we've built around it. And moving on to talk about stuck souls. I want to talk about this personally if someone you know has passed and how you can help them with their journey onwards. Also, if you are someone who is quite sensitive and sometimes has dreams or moments where you feel this presence of a soul who is stuck and how you can deal with that. And also, if you haven't had that experience, but you would like to be part of lifting the energy of the planet up, if you would like to be part of this process of clearing away darker, stuck layers of energy. So, reasons souls can become stuck. Stuck meaning after the moment of their death, that they don't move on, they don't make that transition of going into that space I described of complete love, of dissolution of self, where they can then either go into healing or into their next life journey onwards. So when they stay in this realm, but without a physical form and without that presence and grounding of love. So reasons a soul might get stuck after death and not make that transition. Ones that I have felt and come across include trauma, which is, some of these are maybe more familiar to you, some of them maybe less. So trauma, dying suddenly or violently, and that can leave a state of shock with the soul where they're not able to process what's happened, or they feel a sense of confusion or disorientation, or even a desire for revenge that keeps them rooted here, feeling like they need to seek out and make that revenge happen, rather than understanding that there is this natural law of karma where we are all learning, and there will never be punishment for anyone, but there are many opportunities to learn, and any time that we do something that is against universal law, such as taking a life, then we will have to receive lessons. Not revenge, not punishment, but learning. Another reason souls can become stuck is guilt. Feeling that they have done something wrong that cannot be forgiven. And these may come from religion or from culture. For example, being gay and feeling that you cannot be loved and accepted as you are for who you are. Or having had an abortion and feeling that that is a crime. Or many, many different reasons that a soul may feel that they have done something that cuts them off from the flow of love. So if you meet this, really being compassionate and understanding, you may or may not have that judgment. It may be something where you feel that there is nothing wrong, or it may be something where you're challenged. For example, if that soul had murdered someone else, it may be something that you yourself then judge. So really tapping into this deeper understanding that love is unconditional, that there is this force of love that accepts and forgives every soul, every being as they are, and seeing if you can channel that through and draw that out. Another reason souls can get stuck is the fear of being forgotten, which is why it's so important for people we know to remember them, to take time to create ceremony and ritual and honor their passing, and let them know that in their transition, that is not them being forgotten, that their name doesn't even need to be remembered for them to be honored and remembered. Like the very planet itself remembers where they have walked, and also that they are so much more than that memory. And if they're trying to live in the shadow of a memory, then they will never be able to access the fullness of who they are and continue their journey on. Another reason can be attachment to pain, attachment to the pain body. So you may see it with people in life where it can be hard to give up a negative feeling or an addiction or a sense of suffering or a victim identity, because it becomes part of an identity, part of who we are. So letting go of pain can be challenging during life and also after life. Acknowledging that, and you may want to call in this memory, this wisdom, that we are more than our pain. That as long as we are living in pain or an identification of pain, we are in a shadow of who we truly are. Taking time to really feel into that vaster, wider sense of self that is the truth of our soul. Another reason souls can become stuck is, this one surprised me when I came across it, rebellion. This feeling kind of from old models of religion that there is a God out there who is almost like a dictator or controlling or will strip away their freedom, so that they fear that when they move on and they make that journey into the next level, they will have to bow down to this God and they will lose their personal identity. So it is true that through death we lose our identity, we lose to an extent our sense of self. But it is not to an outside power. It is to an inner power that is much vaster than what we've experienced during life. So reminding these souls of their freedom now and after, that idea is not what's going to happen, that they're not going to lose their freedom in making that transition. So if you come into contact with a stuck soul, or you feel that you have, or you just want to create this opportunity for a stuck soul or a group of stuck souls to move through, here is a process that you can use. 1, call in the light. Calling in your light beings, calling in the energy of light, calling in your own heart light, and feeling yourself guided and supported, knowing that you do not have to do this by yourself, or you do not even have to do anything. You're just creating and speaking these intentions. 2, speak to the soul. Let them know what it is that you're doing. And if you have tapped into or have an idea of any of these reasons why they might have become stuck, you may want to speak to that and to explain what it is that you're creating, what it is that you're opening up, and what it is that your intention is. And 3, be fearless. That doesn't mean literally have no fear. That means to look your fear in the eye, and you may even feel a sense of fear from that soul coming towards you. Softening into it, remembering your inner power, not a power of action, of doing, of controlling, but just this power of your being that is able to handle anything, that there is nothing that can be thrown at you that your soul has not already dealt with and faced. And in anchoring yourself in love, everything else will melt away. So if you get a sense of shadow sent towards you, recognizing that that soul in their center is love, that soul in their center is pure heart consciousness, just as you are. Anything else is a shadow. 4, opening a doorway of light. That may look like speaking out loud. I open a doorway of light. That may look like a gesture with your hands where you draw this doorway of light, or even with a candle or a stick of incense. It may look like asking your light beings to open that doorway of light. You can open it where you choose, because it's not on the physical level. So it doesn't have to be in the space that you're in. You can visualize it or call it into a space far away if that feels more comfortable for you. 5, call in clearing. So guiding that soul in their journey through the door, or just inviting, remembering that you can never force a soul through, that it has to be their own free will and their own free choice. So as you open the door, you explain that that is what you've done. You let them know what it is that lies beyond. And as you feel, or if you feel that they step through, calling in the clearing for any pain that they may have experienced in their life, the clearing for any resonance that it may have with you, any part of you that has related to their pain, or things of you that have also become stuck, allowing them also to go through. Speaking out loud the change that it is that has happened, that this soul is now free, that their journey onwards is safe and is held in love. And then all psychic debris, all energy left behind is also sent into the light, that their life behind them is healed and held in love. And finally, ground and integrate. So sealing that door that you have opened, grounding the energy back into the earth, grounding back into yourself, coming back to your breath, maybe coming back to sensations in your body, maybe. And integrating, finding a way to seal and complete the experience. That may be writing in your journal, it may be lighting a candle, it may be burning sage or Palo Santo. Anything that helps you feel as if you have completed what it is you're doing. So, thank you for listening. I hope that you found something useful within that. Do let me know in the comments below how you got along, any feedback or any different experiences you have, any ways that you approach grief, death, and dying. Much love to all of you, and thank you for watching.